I'll have to jump into this interview right away because there's such an appreciation for sound design and sound editing. You were the sound supervisor for, or the sound supervising sound editor, the correct title for Twisters, which if any movie is gonna blow your mind with sound, it's this one. What was it like to work on this film?
It was an absolute pleasure starting with the filmmakers. And, you see an opportunity like this and you think, wow, what a fun sound film. And it was an absolute blast. But um, working with Isaac and his team was was beyond pleasurable and beyond what I could have expected. They were just so collaborative and so invested in sound. And so right away, I think the success of the film and the success of what we were able to do sonically is very much attributed to how invested Isaac and his team were in that aspect of the filmmaking.
And when you look at the original film and you look at what you're doing now, how much of those little tricks that were used in the past that you implement into this new version?
In some ways, many of the tricks, and in other ways, none of the tricks. I remember seeing it and being very, very excited about how it was just at that time when, oh my gosh, this, is right around the time, kind of just after Jurassic and all of these amazing movies um, were starting to change the cinematic experience. And the same was happening with sound, where the sound was just so much more dynamic and so much more exciting and dramatic. And one of the things that I think they did so well with the first Twister was to give these twisters, these tornadoes, such personality. A lot of what they did at that time was it was kind of creature-ish
Mhm.
and very they had these, beastly personalities.
Mhm.
And I thought that was really amazing because, when we're doing sound design for something like this, you first want to find out, okay, well, what does the real thing sound like? And so tornadoes, when you research what the tornado chasers have documented, and when you listen to what people describe, they're they're very noisy. They're not very articulate. They don't have a lot of specific personality. Most of what they sound like is what they're destroying, whether it's, wood and debris being scattered or just ripping up the earth or just, this pummeling of rain and wind. So it's a big blast of white noise.
Yeah.
And so that's the real sound, but for cinema, you want to give them personality and give them focus. And so the original Twister did an amazing job of doing that, and that was our intention here, was to give them personality. In our case, we wanted to go a little more organic and a little less creature-ish, so we didn't lean so much into the creature stuff. We leaned more into the power and the and different aspects of the personality of the tornadoes. So what you hear a lot more in our twisters are these kind of freight train throbs, these pulses, a lot of very articulated wind manipulations. And then the one thing we did try to create were these howls that the twisters make in the various iterations. I remember reading an article as I was doing research on this film, and there was a woman who thankfully survived a tornado that came through her town, and she was, I think, hiding in her bathtub, and she described this just horrendous howl that it made, and that stuck with me, and so I attempted to create these various howls using, some kind of animal sounds, a lot of manipulated winds, and some other tonalities to just give it this sort of otherworldly bellow.
Mhm.
So you'll hear that in our film as well.
Yeah, I mean that's something I definitely picked up on, even just from high windstorms here in Southern California. You hear that whistle
Mhm.
between certain buildings or certain trees and stuff like that. And you could hear that in the film, especially on IMAX. I mean, that sound system, you could hear almost everything. Uh, it's like Dolby Atmos, except it's not really traveling around you the way it normally does, but it just has this different play on your sensor in your sensory.
It's very immersive, and that was the intention.
Yeah, exactly. But do you actually go out and try and look for sounds in order to develop something like this and take your recorder, try and get something in a film such like this? Because like others have done it in the past, from Star Wars to other movies, taking out a recorder, banging on things, just to get that sound. Did you do that for this film? Try to find something different, or were you able to find through it things that you've already collected over the years?
Absolutely. We're here in the the House of Star Wars, and Ben Burt and Gary Rydstrom and all of our all of these legendary sound veterans. And one of the things that is always at the top of my list is gathering new material, gathering new recordings, finding a fresh palette of paints to create with. And so even before this film, and whatever, I don't even know what my next project will be 2 3 years from now, but anytime I go anywhere, I bring a recorder, and I'm always listening and always recording in the same way that a photographer does, or anybody who's sort of invested in whatever their craft is. So um, for this specific film, I definitely went out and recorded a lot of trains because I was aiming for elements that can create that pulse. Lots of weather, winds especially. Um, and we recorded all the trucks with the, on set. So more practical sounds, we were definitely going and recording. And we didn't have to do that, but it's always nice to have that, to have that opportunity to go and kind of see what they're doing, and then try to recreate that authentically as best we can. And then, pardon me, because I'm always recording, I hearken back to days when I had recordings prior to knowing about this film. In particular, I had spent a week on the beach visiting my family, and I was quarantined during the pandemic, and a tropical storm came through while I was there. So, I took advantage of it. I had my recording gear. So I recorded all of these amazing winds howling through the condo that I was staying on, through the glass windows and glass doors. So we used a lot of that material. And trips through Europe, there were these a lot of the European trains are really fast, and they go through these tunnels and they go through these undergrounds, and they make this howling and this throbbing. And so a lot of those elements were sources. Jets make great sort of blast sounds that you can take and manipulate with winds. So um, always trying new and creative ways to collect material that is new and unique and fresh and special just for this film.
Yeah. And that's what I miss about like going to Universal Studios back in the day, and you used to see how sound design and editing and everything else, special effects were made back in the day when you used to take the tram ride. You don't really get that anymore. And I think there's a generation that forgets like how a lot of the sounds that you hear coming from a movie or television show are really produced and grabbed out of real life different environmental things.
Yeah, we don't just have a button that says tornado and you just, louder or softer,
Yeah.
you have to create it from the ground up. So it's important to have fresh material. And it also is just it gets the creative juices flowing when you step away from your computer and you go out into the real world and you hear what wind sounds like in a storm, and you go find thunderstorms, and you just go to new places. And if you're paying attention and listening, you think, that is a great sound, and I'm going to use that someday. And it's kind of emblazoned in there, and then you go back and you figure out how to modify it to you know to an environment.
Yeah, and we only have a couple of questions left, but as we're getting closer to the end, I wanted to ask you about this, about spatial audio. And now that Dolby Vision has Dolby Atmos, well, with Dolby Atmos, THX was like one of the first in 5.1, and you're seeing this translation, this new environmental into more of a spatial audio type of feel within cinema. What has it been like to work through that and to really get to this point where you're really engulfing the audience into sound and bringing them, not only having them sit in the theater, but also in bringing them into the film?
It's a it's a wonderful technology and a wonderful advance in technology. It allows us to be more immersive with our sound. It allows us to put the audience in the experience. And another benefit is it allows us to provide more separation so
Mhm.
that everything isn't just coming from the screen anymore. It's coming from behind you, it's coming from above you. Um, we have a discrete subwoofer that you can make things sound powerful and make things sound intense without making them too loud. You can put things in the surrounds and still have music or dialogue coming down the middle. You can share the space more equally as you're trying to tell this story. So it's a much more um, it it gives us many more options for telling the story sonically.
Yeah, yeah, and I agree. Like seeing it with the IMAX version, I wish I would have saw it at the Dolby Atmos version. It's just it was so great, the audio at Universal. To see it at City Walk at the Universal
That's a
Theater was just amazing.
fantastic theater, and yeah, when you see it in IMAX at City Walk, you're seeing you're hearing it in a very immersive way. So I'm glad you got to experience it that way.
Yeah, and before I let you go, I have to ask, are we going to see something, a special feature with you and everybody else behind the sound embedded into the home releases?
We definitely have that material. We'll see what the folks who are making the Blu-rays decide to include, but I hope so. We are always very grateful to be included in the process. It's a special opportunity for us to share, what our contributions are.
Yeah, awesome. Continue the great work. Such great work of the sound design on this was amazing. Love it. Continue the great work, and we look forward for everybody to be able to watch Twisters at home. And now you could get that same experience at home now too with
Exactly.
the sound bars and everything else that are just giving you the spatial audio feature.
Yes. Well, thank you very much, Michael. Great to speak with you.
Great to speak with you as well, and we'll see you next time here on Muse by Muse.